do need to just look at my notes. That's the wrong notebook. Jesus Christ. Oh, man. What did... I feel like I took a note from you.
Yes.
Oh, God.
No.
What a day I'm having. Already. Welcome back to another episode of the BARROW Podcast, everybody. Christ alive. So, you've got quotes from Gandhi, you've got quotes from, who else? Einstein, JFK, and I've got a quote from you. If you really think about it, childhood is intense, isn't it?
I meant my childhood, and then by extension, your childhood.
Oh my God! It's those sorts of insights that people are going to be willing to pay for, which brings me to an update. We have an update. We have an announcement. Some exciting news. We're on Substack now, and we are offering a whole suite of new goodies that will really entice you over. We're doing, it's a continuation of this show. It's kind of a sister show on Substack for subscribers. We're also offering some field recordings that Mum and I do, day in the life, behind the scenes stuff. So this all started, and I think we've said this before, that this was born out of, like, part of the writing process was me recording you. And I don't know whether I've actually spoken about that before, like how this happened and how my YouTube channel started was that I was really struggling to do the thing that I'm meant to be doing, which is writing, but for several reasons. One was that I was on medication, I was really having a bad time with mental health. And writing is hard work at the best of times.
You weren't feeling as productive.
I wasn't feeling as
you have been in the past.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's sort of, I would kind of leave voice notes to myself using my iPhone. That was like something I would do where I just sort of ramble. I'd be like, oh, maybe I should write an essay about this, and I would say this, and my point would be that, and blah, blah, blah. And then it sort of became like, well, okay, I could go through the hassle of writing the essay, pitching it, trying to find someone who's going to take it, and then deal with the editing process and all that. And that's not a criticism of editors or publishers. I have real criticisms of publishers, but I'll save that for another time. But yeah, it was sort of like, I think I just need to give myself a break and let myself off the hook a little bit, be kinder to myself. And part of that was like, why don't you just explain your ideas or tell your ideas sort of as a bit of a story? And maybe that could become audio or visual content. So I do those Friday videos, Friday stories on the YouTube channel where I basically just talk about stuff. And that, that can be supplemental to this program that we're doing. I hope people go and check out the YouTube channel. I mean, if you're watching this, you're on the YouTube channel. But yeah, that's kind of how that started. And then for us writing, I think we kind of mentioned it, that because it was memoir, you were getting bogged down with the detail.
The detail and the exact dates and the exact timelines.
Yeah.
Rather than just the general concepts involved.
But when you would speak, when you would talk in a way that was more like how I thought you should write. And that...
So I was clearer.
You've never been clear ever.
No.
So definitely not. But you would loosen up. You would, without that kind of... See, when people sit down to like a blank page or whatever, they really tighten up.
Immediately. rigidity sets.
Yeah, and kind of like a formality comes out.
Yeah,
people,
got to get it right.
You've got to get it right, but also they think their writing voice is or should be so much different to their spoken voice, which is why people have so much trouble writing dialogue, which I've never understood, but everyone struggles with that. I find it the easiest. You can't write it. I find it the easiest thing because I'm like, yeah, you just listen to people. The key to dialogue is to understand that nothing anyone ever says is important.
Well, I think that's what I struggle with because I'm trying to get, when I do dialogue, I'm trying to get something across with each person speaking, and then it just becomes this rigid, unrealistic.
Yeah, and that's the problem people have. It's like you've never heard people speak before. It's like people say nothing when they speak. I mean, it's kind of rich of me to say that because we're speaking and we're recording it. We're so full of ourselves and so certain that what we have to say is important that we're actually doing this.
That's
like
right.
what assholery.
What insanity is that?
But in a writing context, people do make that mistake. They go, oh, well, my characters have got to say something important. It's like day to day, no one says anything important. You use language to communicate really just your basic needs. Like, do we have enough bog roll? Do we have...
Yeah, but see, when I do dialogue, it's more like someone asks the question and then the other person answers. So it's just this question, answer.
And that never happens. I ask you questions all the time and all you say is, gee, I'll have to think about that. And so you put that as the dialogue. That's the dialogue. That's what people say.
It means being relaxed and in the moment, and I've never done that.
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into a writing tutorial, but the last thing I'll say on dialogue, if this is actually interesting to anyone, which I'm sure it's not, is you use it like... it's like seasoning or something. It's like it's just a little sprinkling. Like, really, it's almost there. You can use dialogue this way. This is one way you can. As a way of just kind of like breaking up paragraphs and breaking things up a bit so that visually the reader can move through the work, but also that you make the characters live in the scene. So the character walks through the door and says, hey, and then you move on to what he does in the room. Like, you don't need him to come in and say, hey, everybody, my name's Nick, and I'm in this thing.
That's true.
Anyway. It's the kind of stuff you might get on... No, you won't get that on Substack. Oh, you might. So, anyway, we're on Substack now. That's the important thing. And we're excited about it. So we're offering additional episodes of the show. We're also going to have guests on the show. And also, I'm going to be doing some readings of work in progress, essays I've written, various things, all related to what we talk about here. And subscribers will get each month a little taster, a little excerpt of Deb's work in progress. Now, these are pieces
That's just
these
so tempting.
I am trying to make a little money here. Just shut up. No, we will give some excerpts from Mum's work in progress. Some pieces that may or may not end up in the final cut, the final manuscript that we produce here. And so come and join us on Substack. That's thebarrowpod.substack.com.
Wow. Okay. What are we talking about?
Well, I really liked the quote. If you really think about it, childhood is intense, isn't it?
Well, I'm saying that in relation to mine and yours, and the fact that we're sitting here and in the process of doing a memoir, we're unpicking things from the past.
Yeah.
Which sort of then undermines the idyllic recollection you have.
Well, you said something like, you know,
what I perceived, and this is going on from last time.
Yeah.
What I perceived as an idyllic childhood with a lot of freedom was also a lot of time on my own. So in that sense,
but yeah,
is there an intensity to that I sort of didn't recognise?
I think you were also pointing in the direction of like, in this process of, excuse me, wow, I did a little belcho.
Yeah.
I hope the microphone got that one.
Hello, natural.
You sort of, well, look, you sort of, I guess what I took away from what you were saying to me earlier was that you were kind of concerned, it seemed to me, this is my interpretation, that, you know, that perhaps we were forcing this interpretation, this reinterpretation of life in hindsight. Like, are we... Yeah, well, and I guess I don't know. Was that your point? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so, because we're trying to find the seeds of how we turned out.
Yeah.
So I'm an intense person who can't really relax. So, you know, where does that come from?
Yeah. Yeah, but are you now saying that we're misinterpreting
No.
your past self or something? Like, what do you mean?
No, I'm not saying it's not a misinterpretation. It's well, I think it's more of an understanding of what went before. I think that you were in the moment as a child, but then now you look back and you see the start of what led to a very shy adolescent and a very loner.
Well, we are sort of like coming up, and it makes sense that you're having, like, because I'm sort of
I don't mean that we've destroyed the memories, but we're just reinterpreting them.
Oh, we've destroyed the memories. But were there any good memories? No, I'm kidding. But like, yeah, I don't know. I struggle with all this too. I sort of, I mean, I think I said that was my like sort of core or key ambivalence going in was sort of, and it's certainly what I imagine a lot of other people would say. It's like, well, what are you doing rooting around in the past and digging all this stuff up? And I'm sort of like, yeah, like I get why people feel that way.
Yeah, and generally I think people would say you just leave that and you move on. But because of our intense experiences and the real difficulties that we encountered, we are drawn back to reinterpreting things. To understand them better.
But that troubles me, because wasn't it an inability to let go of events that caused all the problems to begin with?
Yes,
So I feel like I'm simultaneously making the same mistakes I promised myself not to make, while looking at how and why those mistakes occurred in the first place in an attempt to figure that out, to not make them again. But I'm already making them by doing this. I feel really conflicted. Right. I think like the further we go into this thing, I do get a little bit more conflicted, which is interesting. But
I think at the same time, understanding something allows you to let go, because you sort of say, oh, okay.
Yeah, but at what cost? I mean, like, if another certain amount of years pass here while we're figuring it out, haven't we just done the same thing of, like, more time has passed? I don't know. Anyway, we like, I feel like I'm in a fucking time travel movie now.
No, but I think we're sort of figuring it out on a more intellectual level rather than an emotional level.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I understand that. Yeah. Well,
we're not sitting here wringing our hands about the way we are.
Aren't we? I mean, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, well, yeah. So, yeah. On interpreting childhood, you found an interesting article that you were supposed to have brought into this room right now. Where is it? Where is it?
Oh my goodness.
Go get it. Go get it.
Can I?
Yeah, of course you can. I'll just sit here. Oh, boy. Okay. Mum has left the room. If you're listening, if you're watching, you've seen that she's left the room. And I guess I'll just sit here while she finds this oh so important article that was going to be the cornerstone piece to this episode today. Oh, that was quicker than I expected, actually. All right. So you were able to really just go grab that thing. Now, you're not out of breath, breathing heavy on the mic, are you?
Of course I
am.
Located it because I save a lot of things.
Mementos, yes.
And I must admit, when I read articles like this, I'm sort of reading it for some connection to my own stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's the article? Tell us about it.
It's a woman writing about her daughter getting a diagnosis.
What? What's that bad? What's going on?
Well, I really have to re-familiar.
Well, you can refamiliarize yourself. We can edit this down. You just refamiliarize yourself there.
She deals with this quirky little girl, and then the diagnosis comes along that she's autistic.
Oh my God.
See, I can't talk about it properly, so I really need to look at it.
Well, then look at it. We've got time. We can edit it down then.
Yeah, but there was a part that did make sense in what we were talking about.
No, that's fine.
And you've sort of thrown it on me.
Well, it's just your idea to do this article.
Was it? I can't remember that.
Mum, we can just edit the whole thing down. Just sit there and read the article. It's fine.
Well, see, it starts off with looking back. I can see all the signs now that I know what they are. Of course, hindsight's a wonderful thing. So the whole tenor of the article is sort of like what we're doing.
Okay. So do you have this article because you believe you're autistic? Why do you have this article?
Well, no, I was sort of thinking about you and about how things were missed.
Oh, I see.
In that sense.
Right.
Yeah, but there was a particular part. I think the point of that, though, was that the mother was just accepting things.
Let me have a look at this article. Sarah Hayden always knew her daughter was, quote, quirky, but a diagnosis revealed the full story. Okay. Right. Okay, so this is from the perspective of the mother, who has found a diagnosis for her daughter later, and then one day I received a phone call. Life was getting more and more difficult, so not long after I found myself sitting in a room. At the end, the psychologist casually looked over her glasses and said, right, okay, so the girl, right. The following months were an emotional whirlwind of expensive and lengthy appointments and assessments until we finally got the official diagnosis. Okay, so she's diagnosed with ASD, so autism spectrum disorder, right? And shows all the signs of what used to be called Asperger's, which they don't really use that anymore. You're just diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and then you're okay. It's a relatively short one. I don't know why it was causing you so much trouble to read it quickly. Psychologist walked out and formally introduced herself, holding out. Pointing out that the poster arrived in the waiting room was wrong.
I think I was just reading it in context of how we never allowed any counselling for you.
Well, look.
And how things were just accepted, well, not just accepted, just even missed.
Yeah, okay, so, well, I mean, look, this brings up a lot of things, like, so, okay, first of all, I want to say, for the record, that, like, calling everybody and everything in the world autistic it's
not
become,
helpful.
Well, it's not helpful, and it's sort of become this kind of, like, it's like this faddish kind of obsession that people have with saying everything's autistic. And it's like, okay, all right, but you know that that's also a real thing. And I'm not saying that diagnosis isn't real. That we just looked at. Of course it is. Like, you know, I mean, that's literally what that article's about. That's great. But but it's interesting because, like, we're at a point. So obviously we're writing a book, but we're also at a point in our lives outside the memoir we're trying to produce where we're reassessing or kind of looking back at everything with a view onto psychology and diagnoses, which I think even in the very first episode of this show, I said that my main concern with the book was that it didn't become a mental health book, that it was a book about family, right? Because I think that there's this obsession with diagnoses and prognosis and, like, what's the label and all that sort of stuff. And I really think that's helpful. Like, I mean, look, I'm diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, ADHD, and PTSD, but I think in my case, they call it complex PTSD, which is like prolonged PTSD. There's the PTSD that you have from, like, a big trauma, like a car accident, or, like, you know, you're in a building that collapses. And then there's complex PTSD, which is like a long form, like living with an alcoholic parent, or living just, you know, with someone for many, many, many years.
Yeah, but that's the point of this in relation to family. It's not about the diagnoses. It's about people not being aware of the individuals in the family. And the fact that you have got complex PTSD is proof of a family that didn't see what was going on around them. So that was my point. It wasn't, I wasn't saying let's go out and diagnose everyone.
No, I didn't say. I didn't.
But it was emblematic of what was happening in our family as we closed the doors and closed the gates on the rest of the world and thought that we and each and every one of us was all right.
Well, it's interesting because so what I find, like, the way you're describing that, we close the door on the outside world. You said in the belief that we're all right and everything will be all right. But also what came to mind immediately was the words that came to my head were, because we believe we could protect ourselves, that we could keep ourselves safe, and it's like
Yes.
you can't, because your limit or the ceiling on your ability to protect yourself is how well you understand yourself. And if you don't, you can't perceive what you've conditioned yourself to repress.
And also, in our case, you mentioned before about this obsession now with labels, and you've certainly got the labels.
Yeah.
Our efforts to put that wall up between the world and us was so that you wouldn't get the label. You were the product of single mum and divorce and all the rest of it. So we won't put this little boy in counselling to talk about his feelings because he's already got a label on him. So that was the misunderstanding.
Absolutely.
In our family, that counselling and seeking outside help and expert help, even just to talk things through, was seen as doubling down on the label that the circumstances had created. So you've just got this, circular thing going on.
So, I mean, there's two factors to that. There's the kind of, I mean, I have talked about this on the YouTube channel, which is that getting involved, I'm trying to work out how to phrase this, giving yourself over to I don't know what to call it, the institution or the culture of psychology and psychoanalysis is like the biggest first step in terms of, okay, let me just pause and take that back a second. We talk about people going and seeking help. We talk about people going and getting a diagnosis and getting on medication and, ostensibly fixing their problem. Okay, so, and that's all great, that makes sense. But what is talked about, I think, less, certainly now, because there's a kind of like a pervasive acceptance of psychology itself, is that like our family, and there are many families who are about 4 steps behind that. They haven't even accepted the idea of psychology and counseling and this kind of intervention help, because culturally, and a lot of this is class-based, they don't believe in psychology. And like that's kind of a hard thing to translate, like to get across to people who don't sort of get that. It's like there are cultural and class barriers to the world of psychology, right? And sometimes those things, well, I just said they're interlinked. Not always. I don't want to sort of say that, like, working class people or something don't know what psychology is. They do. But a lot of the time there's just cultures around it of like, what, like the idea of sharing your feelings with a stranger is like stepping out of the bounds of the family. Like you're spreading your shit all over the place, basically. Like it's
what happens in the family stays in the family.
Absolutely.
And I don't mean that in any kind of
awful
way. Every emotion stays in the family.
Yeah, it stays in the family. It's private. We have this idea of privacy, which is kind of privacy is an interesting idea in and of itself. I mean, who gets privacy? Like, first of all, anyway, I could talk about privacy. It doesn't matter. But I was saying in one of the videos I did on the YouTube channel, I was like, you have to believe in psychology itself first. You have to like get to that point. Like, I mean, Yeah, there's tons of cultures, and I know certainly migrant families are like, what the fuck is that? Like, you don't do that.
To quote an elder of the family, when a doctor suggested to him that he might need something for his depression, and he said, depression? No, I don't have depression, I know my own mind. And this elder...
Let's be clear about who you're talking about. You're talking about your father.
My father. And my father grew up rural Australia, grew up in a time when things were tough for his family, and there were many instances of mental health issues in the family that were dealt with in the family.
But I've already said on like in a prior episode, like we found out recently, I never knew this, that his own mother was coming down to the city to receive electric shock therapy in the 30s and 40s. Like, that has never been talked about. So the idea for your father to then go on and kind of deny the mental health practice,
I know,
it's
unbelievable.
It's more than unbelievable, it's unconscionable. It's like his pushing that away to really appease his own feelings about his mother. He wanted to believe his mum was like everybody else, and that she was okay. She wasn't. She was really unwell, and that's sad. Like, it's fine. But he spent his lifetime unable to accept that fact.
Right.
That basic fact.
The basic
right?
fact.
And
then when there are examples him,
with his wife, with his daughter, with his grandson, at every turn, he steers the ship out of the direction of going down that pathway. I remember him, I have this classic example, right? There was a football player who stepped out of a season because of depression, right? Like, he had mental health problems, and this was a long time ago. This was early 90s. It was a big deal, and I actually need to do some research on who that was. I think I know which football club it was. Anyway, I need to go back and have a think about that, but it doesn't matter. The point is, you've got football, masculinity, men who don't talk, stoicism, all that stuff, and now you've got a football player saying, I can't play football because I feel sad.
Yeah.
And that is just unacceptable to many people, right? Yeah. And like your dad was so
bewildered,
but he was condemning of the he was like, this guy gets paid. I remember the words. He gets paid to kick a football. What has he got to be unhappy about? Like, fuck you. Yeah. How dare you?
Yeah.
And it is that aspect of how dare you. Like, everybody's got it tough. Like, life is hard, and you're stepping out to say you're unhappy. Who the fuck do you think you are? There's it really is like an affront to some people. And it
wouldn't be if he was stepping out because he'd got a diagnosis of cancer or something like that.
Oh yeah, no, that'd be fine. Yeah, because we've talked about this. Because psychology is in the realm of character and personality. So your character, you're the sort of person who says, I feel sad today and can't play football. Boo hoo. You know, you're weak. You are weak.
Yeah, well, it gets back to that definition of what is weak and what is strong.
Yeah, and psychological issues are thought to be, because they're of the mind, something that you're meant to mentally will yourself through, will yourself over.
But it's also that notion of, oh, well, you're fine now. You've had three sessions at a psych. Oh, is that fixed now?
You've talked about your issue. Okay, you've been sad for a couple of weeks now. all right, enough.
Yeah.
That's over now.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
So there's just a fundamental non-understanding of the whole deal.
But so yeah, I kind of, I see how, well, let's put it in context and of what you're saying, sort of like a review of what we've said so far, is that like the thing that tickled you or that got your attention about that article was a child not being perceived, but, well, actually the opposite, a child being perceived and then the parents taking the steps.
Yes.
Oh my God, this child seems a little different, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something going on here. I don't really understand it, so why don't I go to a professional, seek help?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a diagnosis and now we're on the pathway. Something that is easily achievable. And then, but in the case of me, I'm cordoned off from all that help.
Any of that help.
Because the thinking is, that's helping. That's helping me.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and it's just the opposite.
We're keeping you safe from
diagnosis. If you get it from a label, which doesn't even make sense, because if
you internalize that so much, that
I refuse.
When you refuse, when you've got some opportunities at school to talk to people.
I refuse to see counsellors at school. I refuse, like when
because
they were
of the family.
They were offered to me because my family doesn't have any problems, and how dare you even sort of come to me with this bullshit?
It's not really, to be fair, Toby, I don't think it's even how dare you. It's just a non-understanding. We had particular circumstances.
Deborah, you and I didn't have a fucking conversation until 4 years ago. It's beyond non-understanding. We do not speak. We do not communicate emotions. Nothing is talked about.
Yeah.
That is what we do. We don't do those things. We don't have a cry about it. We don't. But what we do is just break down internally behind the scenes. Everybody's screaming, tearing their hair out and crying because they're so bottled up because they need to fucking speak.
Yeah, but are you understanding what I'm trying to say, though? I think it's just an inability to do that or to see that that's important. I don't think... Are you saying it's a conscious decision or this is wrong? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Of course, I get your point.
Either way, nothing gets talked about.
Well, I mean, it's conscious when you're sitting in front of the news and there's a football player going, I've got depression, I can't play football, and you're going, fuck you.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's pretty conscious.
Yeah.
But I also know what you're trying to say, which is those words aren't the words of somebody with malice. Those are the words of somebody who just can't, it's not even in the realm of something that they can understand.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
And they certainly don't see the
effect.
Their own family members experiencing the same when it's right there in front of them.
No, they don't. They perceive none of it. It's just
that's
not.
What I mean. Yeah.
But like that culture, that kind of that rural stoicism and that silence, that kind of like oppressive, suffocating silence of you just don't like to broach. I mean, I grew up in a household, and I had experiences in other households, like my paternal grandparents' household, where truly to broach the topic of feelings, like, hey mum, hey dad, I don't feel good, like there's something, it's beyond the realm of what is actually possible. Like you might as well take off all your clothes at the dinner table and start masturbating in front of your parents. It's that,
Yeah.
it is that shocking. And we're talking about feelings, just saying how you really feel.
Well, I mean, the evidence is there in my childhood when I'm so shy, I can't go into a milk bar
that's really the end point of where we're at with your childhood in the memoir, and we're about to go into your adolescence. And you've told me stuff, and I'm sort of like at this point where I'm like, oh my God, like, I think what devastated you about the article that you read was that, and what I'm trying to ascertain as well is like, how can you not perceive signs? Like, and because like, don't you have an instinct when you do see it, but you don't act. You're just conditioned to not act.
Well, in my case, it was a father who maybe saw things but didn't act, but placated, tried to make it all right around you. And you had a mother's reaction who didn't notice difference, but her answer to that, or her way of addressing that, was to just push you into things.
And to ridicule difference.
And to ridicule, yeah.
So it becomes...
And ridicule you.
Yeah, oh yeah, the bullying stuff, there are things that your mother, did to me, and definitely did to you. Like you're starting to tell me stuff where I'm like, it's so cruel and it's so sad. And I'm like, how did you live with her later? Like, how did you see this person every day? I mean, like, she was horrible to you at times. Like, a lot of the time. And I'm like, I'm just sort of devastated. And her meanness and her awfulness comes out of her own,
lack of self,
but her own smothered emotional life, her own
smothered. Oh, absolutely.
Know,
there was no emotions going on there. No.
And it's just one of the things that I find that intrigues me about you picking up on that article though is, now I'd like to do the research on this. Maybe I should do more research. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's my job to do like scientific research. That's not the point of what we do.
Yeah.
But I do know that ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and Asperger's is really underdiagnosed in women. Now I don't know why that is. I mean, the general kind of consensus on that seems to be the way that girls are socialized and conditioned. I don't quite understand how that works. Like, I don't know what the translation is. I don't know why gender conditioning for women, like how that manifests in a way that causes ASD to be suppressed.
Yeah.
I don't get the steps there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that there's plenty of articles and information online. But I do know that ASD is really underdiagnosed in women for whatever reason. But it's interesting that you bring that to my attention, because, like, I mean, there's aspects of you that it's like, I mean, you as a girl, as a little girl, and you as the person I know now, it's like, I don't know. I mean, you hyperfixate on things. You are anxious beyond belief. like, a few psychiatrists have said to me that I grew up in a household with a mother who had a nervous disorder or an anxiety disorder. But then there's, I mean, you don't read cues very well socially at times. Like, there seems to be a lack of understanding aspects of life, like sexual stuff, maybe, I don't know. Like, there was a man recently who I'm convinced was like very friendly towards you at a thing. Do you remember this?
Running into someone at the coffee shop. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's sweet. And you just, it didn't occur to you. It seemed.
It never did.
Yeah, see, I find that so strange. Like, because it was like, there were overtures, let's say, right? Like, it seemed obvious to anyone. And I don't know whether that's you putting a blanket on that part of your life for so long that it didn't register, or whether it's you not registering. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
And I was sort of like,
it was a bit of both, I think, actually.
Yeah, probably a little bit of both. But there's just these things, and then how isolated you are as a kid, but like your inability to socialize, your inability to integrate with other children. Like you show a lot of signs of something. Of something.
I'll make a label and wear it around.
Well, it did occur to me, it has occurred to me at times writing this book, that I'm like, and maybe I should go more into this. But it has occurred to me while writing this book, I'm like, is this actually a story of something that, like, what we've been talking about, that didn't get diagnosed? Is this kind of a classic example of that?
But I think that's the case for every person in the family.
Yeah. No, of course, I understand that, but I'm talking specifically about what's in that article. Because there is some stuff with you that I'm like, okay. And the problem that I have is that, see, I wanted, when we started doing this, I really wanted to like, have you, this sounds really terrible, I wanted to have you tested. As in, properly, like I mean that, like,
yeah,
just see what you score. But part of the problem is your age now. Like,
yes,
it's very hard to do it now. We're kind of past that point. And because we've had all these conversations and stuff, I don't think it would be.
I wouldn't be giving the accurate.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a fair test.
Yes,
because.
But I'll take you up on the point about me being difficult or having difficulties socially. I'm perceived. See, I've always hidden behind different personas.
I know that.
In my work life,
I
was perceived as a very outgoing, social person.
Yeah, and so was I at school.
Yeah.
It's meaningless. Like
I think we learn.
It is and it isn't, right? Like it
put on a persona.
Yeah, but also, like, it's got to do with comfort. Like, you're extremely comfortable in that one role.
Yes. That's
and
right.
So all the best bits of you come out.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There's like almost an overconfidence. Like it's like way up.
Yeah.
But you counter that against everything else, and then it's like, well, it really doesn't make sense because you're so confident in this one way, but you can't do the smallest tasks.
No, and you also can't transfer it. You're only that persona in really comfortable situations, which you have sort of created to protect yourself.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that you're only that comfortable and that confident when even in that role the conditions are so explicitly tailored to you.
Sure. Got it.
Well, that's so what we're talking about, we're sort of talking around it, but like a quick version of this is mum worked a job, and I'm not hiding the job, we'll talk about it later, but mum worked a job, and let's say she had her office cubicle, right? Now, most people moved cubicles year to year, you know, and they were sent out to different places for the job. Mum stayed in the same role in the same job in the same cubicle for 30 years, and if there was a suggestion that she may even have to move cubicles or give up her stapler, she would have a meltdown to the level that her employers would fear the repercussions of moving her. Now, tell me that that's a normal, well-adjusted person.
Okay.
You're very good at your job, very confident in the job, but also the only person...
Only in that position and place.
But the only person who never gave up their cubicle or their stapler. You know, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's, and for such a long amount of time.
All right. Okay. I do like that. That's enough.
That's enough. I think that probably is enough, to be honest. And it kind of opens the doorway for next week, which is we're kind of moving from the memoir from mum's childhood into her kind of pre-adolescence before we get into the adolescence. So we're sort of, we're going on, and we'll check in with the book on the next episode, and move along. We're about, I don't know, we're a good chunk of the way through now. All right, everybody, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. We're now on Substack, the BARROWPod.substack.com. Please subscribe. You're going to get extra features, and you're also going to be able to contribute questions to a Q&A that we have planned for later in the year around our birthday time, which is actually a shared birthday, sort of. Okay, bye.
Bye.